Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast, episode 32, in which we'll be looking at chapter 32, Across the Iron Road. First of all, apologies for the sound of my voice. I have an actual cold at the moment. Do you remember those colds? Well, they're back, it seems. Anyway, I've had an online conversation with a listener in the US who wants to remain anonymous, but is okay with being quoted. It's always good to hear different perspectives on the book. They say, quote, "Love your podcast. In the latest episode, you mentioned the enduring appeal of the book and why it appeals to certain people so strongly. This is a weirdly personal response, but it's something I thought a lot about, trying to figure out why I still come back and read it once a year, why I still feel so comforted and inspired by it after all these years. I grew up in a severely abusive situation and was also forced into a lot of adult situations that were difficult to understand at a young age. At the same time, I idealised/feared my military officer father, who I didn't see very often due to his work. I was always running off into the fields for hours, days, and the peace, beauty and freedom I found there was incredibly well illustrated in Richard Adams' writing. I strongly responded to the familiar military themes and saw in Hazel a sort of ideal leadership. Woundwort was also a very good symbol of things I was scared of as a child, as well as the chaotic, unpredictable and vicious nature of the ill they were constantly vigilant against. Lastly, the idea of overcoming such adversity through cunning, rather than overwhelming power and violence. It was my first real exposure to that idea, and I latched on very tightly. It gave me hope and a path to try to follow myself. Anyway, weirdly long response. Hope it's not awkward. Thank you for the show you make, and I hope it was an interesting perspective for you." End quote. Not awkward at all. Hazel is indeed truly an archetype to look up to. He represents the kind of balanced, kind and intelligent person anyone would want to have in their lives, particularly as a parent, in stark contrast to the abuser Woundwort. I get what you're saying completely and wish you well on your journey. Chapter 32, Across the Iron Road. The opening quote is another one in French, and I have never bothered translating it before. John Ruths has helped me out here. He says the translation is, quote, "spirit of rivalry and misunderstanding, which more than once preserved the English army from defeat," end quote. The person quoted is General Jean-Baptiste Jourdan, a French officer in the Revolution and Napoleonic Wars. The backhanded compliment towards their historical enemy, the English, is both funny and interesting, basically implying that an army where there is a little chaos and dissent can have an advantage, as Efrafa is about to find out, though they won't know it. Yet. During last chapter, Pipkin excused himself because he had found the story of the Black Rabbit too frightening. Because he excused himself, he was able to spot the fox approaching them at the end of the chapter. This chapter opens with an explanation of how rare encounters between rabbits and foxes are, and how easy it is for rabbits to get away from a fox. The only hope a fox has is to sneak up on them downwind, so Pipkin spotting this fox is very lucky. The behaviour of this fox suggests that it was not deliberately hunting them, but would have come upon them by chance. Hazel also realises that Fiver probably used Pipkin's fear as an excuse to act as a sentry. Yet again his instincts preserve the group. Hazel sensibly observes the fox while planning what to do next. Suddenly, a rabbit pushes past him out into the open. Fiver says it was Bigwig, who they then watched deliberately draw the fox away from the group by pretending to limp away from them. This was completely unnecessary, and Hazel feels very angry. As Bigwig and the fox disappear into undergrowth, they hear the squeal of a rabbit and immediately conclude that Bigwig has been killed by it. Suddenly he reappears and runs towards them fast. He is unharmed. A very angry Hazel begins to round on Bigwig before Fiver points out that the group are very stressed and need to get away. Hazel takes it as his advice. They cross the Cole Henley Road, as it is named on Google Earth, into more open farmland beyond, where they make good progress. As soon as they stop, Hazel has a conversation with Bigwig. Hazel tells Bigwig how angry he is and asks him to explain himself. Bigwig says that he was feeling tense, though the source of his tension is kept from the reader for now, and felt he had to do something such as run a risk. And it worked. He explains the rabbit that cried out by saying that as he made away from the fox, he bumped into a group of large rabbits who tried to stop him going any further. As he broke free, he heard squealing and concluded that the fox must have got one of them. This is the death of Mallow, member of the Efrafan Owsla that we learn about in chapter 37, for Bigwig had bumped into a wide patrol. How much more luck are the rabbits of Watership Down going to have to rely on? First, they narrowly avoid an encounter with a fox, then that same fox saves them from an Efrafan Wide-Patrol that was tracking them, and that only happens because one of the group does something stupid. Maybe they are under the protection of Frith. Silver comes up to Bigwig and Hazel to say he's realised that they are closer to Efrafa than he thought. They need to go. Hazel says he wants to skirt around Efrafa and cross the Iron Road. This next part of the journey takes place during a moonlit night, and Adams embellishes its description with the sounds of downland birds that they encounter during it. Eventually, as morning approaches, Silver thinks they are near the Iron Road. Here, rather than being at the top of a bank, it is in a cutting. They cross it and rest in the field beyond, where they are met by Kehaar. They are exhausted, but he warns them that another wide patrol is tracking them and they need to go immediately. Again, having aerial reconnaissance proves crucial for the group. They take cover among some trees. Kehaar says that they moved just in time as the wide patrol turned back as it reached the Iron Road. He keeps watch as the rabbits sleep, and the day grows hot. A bit of a short episode this week, but this isn't that complicated a chapter. Next time, the rabbits reach the River Test, where they have an idea, and Bigwig goes to Efrafa.